I haven't done a mushroom foraging vlog in ages, so this is quite exciting. I don't sound that excited. I've got a bit of a croaky throat and I'm a bit premenstrual. It's too much information maybe, but that just explains my mood. But yeah, mushroom season is finally kicking off. It's just come all of a sudden, like there wasn't any mushrooms and then all of a sudden they are everywhere. And this season is definitely going to be a good one. We can all tell, like all us mushroom foraging folk have been saying that this year is going to be a good year because the last 2 years were pretty crap. I think it was 2022, the last decent year that was very abundant for mushrooms. Yeah, so let's go mushroom hunting. That is some chicken of the woods, very much past its best. Ugh. That is from this year though, I would say, because it's still got a bit of firmness and moisture to it, but it's definitely gone past it. Over there, that crusty old white thing, that looks like a last year's chicken of the woods, which probably came off this same piece of wood. And interestingly, I've just noticed that this is a piece of silver birch, a very old piece that's been chopped down, and there's the rest of the silver birch there. And I have never found chicken of the woods on silver birch, so that's interesting. Nobody's ever said that it's not possible, but that's just a first that I'm seeing it. Let me introduce you to the mother log. It's actually a whole tree, it's not just a log, but I call it the mother log because this was the first ever tree that I foraged and ate mushrooms from, and it hosts so many different types of fungi, but primarily oysters. Like, I can always guarantee that I'll get a heavy oyster harvest from here. And I did come here yesterday actually with my friends, and I was thinking on the off chance I'll come and check the mother log. And yeah, they're all here, the summer oysters. And I do know that oysters are one of the fastest growing mushrooms, but I kind of underestimated these ones actually, because when we were here yesterday, there was this group over here, these ones, and they weren't much bigger than like this. So like they'd sort of just gone past their pinning stage and they were like little buttons. And literally overnight, they have grown this much and I am shocked. It's crazy how quick they grow. So I've just so happened to find these like at the perfect time. It is very hot and I think that's why there's so many flies around, but we've had rain on and off during the last few weeks of the heat waves. That's allowed them to grow. But yeah, unfortunately with the summer ones, the flies really like them for some reason. So I still pick them to eat them, but you want to check like if they've got flies in the gills or any little maggots in the stem. Like if you cut the stems, you'll be able to see any little holes. So I just picked a few, but I'm going to trim the ends off of some of them because there's a bit of bark and moss, and that will make a big mess in the mushroom bag. And it can help the fungi to reproduce more mushrooms if you leave your trimmings where you found the mushroom. But I was going to say, sort of do it discreetly, like bury them over, or even sometimes I like put the mushroom trimmings back under bits of bark where I found the mushrooms, and that can help. So I'm pretty certain that these are the summer oyster or the pale oyster, Pleurotus pulmonarius, and I think I said it already, but the winter grey oysters and these, the summer oysters, evidently grow on this log. So in the colder months, all the grey ones come out, and then in the summer, all the pale come out. But in terms of seasons, they can potentially both grow at the same times of the year, but generally the grey ones come out in the colder months. And apparently the pale oyster and the grey oyster can hybridize, so they can kind of create their own new species or something like that. Some of these are really pale and some of them are slightly grey, so that could be the case here. I did eat some of these last night. I put them on my veggie kebabs and they were really fresh and tasty. but I did give them a really good rinse to make sure I got out any fly larvae and maggots and things. There's a nice little nook here, so I'm going to tuck my trimmings into there. It may or may not colonise because this wood is very dry and old, but it's just like a little token of good luck. These are the ones that I picked from yesterday, and they have completely flattened overnight and matured massively. And there's still nothing wrong with them, to be honest, to pick, but if I've got the option, then I'll pick the younger ones. And these have probably got more bugs in too. If you watched any of my mushroom foraging vlogs from autumn last year, which is when I started doing them, you might have heard me talk about the lookalikes for oysters. So with the grey dark oysters, you can't really go too wrong. With these ones, there's a little more room for error. The main lookalike of concern is the angel's wings mushroom, which is a white oyster looking mushroom, but as far as I know, it generally grows more up north and it prefers conifer wood, whereas these edible oysters like oak and beech. This is an old beech log here, but yeah, they do look quite similar, especially if the summer oysters are very pale like these ones. These ones are very white, and the angel's wings are a very bright white too. So look up angel's wings and make yourself familiar with those. And then you've got oysterlings, of which there are a few mushroom species that are called oysterlings. You've got the olive oysterling, which is a greeny kind of grey, and then you've got smaller oysterlings, which are more frilly and white, but yeah, they all look quite different. If you've got a good eye for detail, then you should be quite good at mushroom spotting. Look at that whopper of a tick. That is the biggest one I've seen this year. I always inevitably get ticks, and you're probably thinking, well, why are you frolicking around with your legs and feet out? But I find it's better to have my skin exposed because then I can actually see them on me. Right, it's gone. I flicked it off. That was a huge one, and it had a red body. I've forgotten what those ones are called. But yeah, I was finding that when I was wearing trousers or more layers, I was getting like the same amount of ticks, but because I couldn't see them, by the time it had crawled up me and stuck itself into my body, it was then too late to find it. And I have found that they would crawl up and like go in my hair and then come back down again, and then like embed themselves in my legs and things. So yeah, so far having bare legs has been a success. I haven't had any ticks sticking in me. I spy a Russula mushroom over there on that mossy bank. I've seen quite a few Russulas so far, so it should be a good year for them. I found barely any last season, and the ones that I did find were very deteriorated. I was literally just about to say I'm not going to pick it because it's the only one here, and then I literally just touched it and it snapped off because it's quite dry. They have these very dry, chalky stipes. I'm thinking this could be a charcoal burner, which is one of the common edible russulas, but there's so many russulas, it's one of the really difficult families to identify species from. And this one is pretty dried out, so the gills are coming away anyway, but just by feeling it, I have felt other mushrooms where the gills are much more brittle. So if this is the charcoal burner, then if it was in its prime, the gills wouldn't be very brittle and you would be able to just gently flick them like that and they wouldn't break off. Also with russulas you can do the taste and spit test, and the general rule is if it's spicy then don't eat it, and if it's not spicy then you've got an edible one. But I'm not going to do that with this one because it's looking a bit gross. There's more of them here, and there's a nice big chunky one. These look the same as the other one that I was just talking about. With the charcoal burners, they can come in a good variation of colours, and it ranges from purple to green to grey, but these ones are quite green. Look at the guttation as well. Look, I'll zoom in. Mushroom sweat. That's so cool. It's in a really good spot for the lighting. I've just snapped a little bit off of that nice mushroom there to do the taste test. And I've been playing with the gills and they're not that brittle, so. Tastes good, just tastes like a nutty mushroom kind of flavour. So that is probably a charcoal burner. Here's another beech tree with oysters on. Every single beech tree I've walked past is popping with oysters so far. I mean, these ones are too dry to eat, but I can see some more over here. There they are, there's some little baby ones in there. I think I'm going to have to leave because there is so many ticks. Every time I bend down and stand up again, there's 5 more on my legs. So far I've probably picked off at least 20 from my legs, and the main reason that it concerns me is because I get a bit of an allergic reaction and I'm itchy for days and it's so irritating, so I am gonna go. One thing that certainly does help with the ticks is having hairy legs. So tip for ladies, don't shave your legs because you can feel them crawling up and it's a lot more ticklish. And yeah, guys generally don't shave their legs, but if you do, then don't do it because you'll be able to feel the ticks. And there's a nice hoof bracket to end things on. Bye!